Kia ora koutou. Really nice to see so many people joining us this afternoon. It's fantastic to see everybody here. So I've got the pleasure of welcoming our guest speakers today. But before I start, we'll have a karakia to open our session. Whakatakati hau ki te uru, whakatakati hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. So I've got the pleasure of welcoming our guest speaker today, Alison Woollard. So Alison is currently Learning Manager at Experience Wellington, and she'll be talking us through what local curriculum means. And she brings a wealth of experience to this topic, having been a school principal in the past herself. She was actually my manager at City Gallery, so I know Alison well. And she recently ran a session for the learning team at Experience Wellington about local curriculum. So that's how I knew she had expertise in this area to share with us all in a webinar. And of course, it's very topical at the moment for our sector because the Ministry of Education is making it a key feature of their new funding for all of us. And Alison will be joined today by the lovely Sue Clement, who is principal from Te Aro School. She will be giving us insights into her school curriculum and how it was developed. She's also got some great ideas about how our sector can enrich schools' local curriculum to share with everybody. I've known Sue for many years, both through my work as an educator at City Gallery, but also through a Māori language and history project called Kura Ahurea, which I recently coordinated for Te Atiawa local iwi here in Wellington, and her school is a participant as part of that. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Alison to talk to us about local curriculum.
Thank you, Helen. Kia ora koutou. No mai haere mai ki tēnei hui. It's great to see everybody here. I know that in the audience today, we're going to have some people who've got lots of prior knowledge of local curriculum and what it is, and some people may have very little or none at all. So this is an introduction to local curriculum, and we're going to go through the what is the local curriculum. So if that's what it is, so what might it mean for us in the culture and heritage sector? And then now what, which is more of a reflection for each of us at our sites about how might we engage with the local curriculum of our schools. So I often like to think about some people around the world. I think they think that teachers wake up on a Monday morning and go, what shall I teach my class today? It's a sunny day, we might go out and do some PE, or on a Sunday, they sit down and gather up some bright ideas. Well, of course, that is a lot what the teacher does, but this slide represents all of the background that goes into the teacher's planning for what happens when those students interact with them, when they come into that classroom on a Monday morning, and then how the teachers will decide when they are going to engage with an outside provider to enhance their curriculum. So what this demonstrates is at the top of the diagram, there are the legislative frameworks that all schools have to work to. And if you were able to join Pam and Tara's webinar a few weeks ago, they actually talked through the New Zealand education system. So if you want to go into any of this in a bit more depth, you can go back and have a look at that webinar that is on our Facebook page.
Yes.
Or website.
Yeah, on the there'll be a link on the website and the YouTube channel, and you put it on Facebook.
Yeah. So there are many ways to skin this cat. So the Education Act, of course, is the big legislative piece of document that says that children have to start school at 6 and they finish by 16 or after, and all of that sort of legislation. The National Education Goals and Administration Guidelines tell us what has to be covered in schools. So it tells us about students have to be encouraged and enabled to reach their potential. There has to be equality of opportunity. There has to be a broad curriculum. It stresses about the importance of early years and so on. So those are things that every school has to adhere to. And some of the things that have come in recently have been around healthy eating. You'll hear that, oh, the schools have got to be responsible for this now. So a lot of things that have to be mandated in schools will come through that legislation. The New Zealand curriculum is something that I know that a lot of you are familiar with. The refresh is on its way, and so do keep in touch with that on TKI and the ministry websites. A lot of times we think about the learning areas and we can quickly jump to, oh yes, well, we're going to focus on art or we're going to focus on social sciences. But in that very small document, there are some amazing pages of information about what the vision is for New Zealand curriculum and for the students of New Zealand. What are the principles behind that and what values do we want to see throughout our education system? So it's well worth connecting with those, because those are the things, those broad overarching themes, that it will be important for us as providers for schools and supporting the curriculum that we are demonstrating as well. So it's worth connecting with those. And there's also a raft of supporting documents, which we'll briefly touch on today, that help support the school and the community in developing their curriculum. Another section in there, the 2020 National Education Learning Priorities. This is something that gets updated more quickly. And if you connect into those, you'll find what the current government are feeling are the priorities that we need to be addressing in our education system. And this covers much more of a learner-centered approach. And so they're talking about schools having more connection with communities, making sure that students' language, identity and culture are reflected in all of their learning, incorporating Te Reo Tikanga Māori. So you can find out from there what some of those features are of the priorities that the government have. And then we start moving into some areas where the school has a say. And the fact that our curriculum doesn't tell schools what they have to do prescriptively, this is where the Board of Trustees will guide, and with the support of the principal, the staff and the whole community, will develop their school vision and charter. This can be different for every school, depending on how they feel, what they feel is important for their curriculum. So the school vision and charter will be written, and that's when the school local curriculum will start to get developed. So the local curriculum will, of course, cover the sort of content that the community want to be covered, but also the ways of teaching and learning. So the pedagogy. So does, for example, the school want there to be streamed classes where all of the same age groups work together? Do they want whānau groups? Do they want students to work in single cell classrooms? Do they believe in open plan classrooms and more modern learning environments? So all of those things can be decided by the school. There isn't anything that's telling you what you've got to do there. And then say the three of us in this room now, say the three of us were teachers in a learning team or in a school, what we would do next is we'd sit down, we'd look at the students we've got and the community we're working with, and we would develop a team curriculum overview from that school curriculum overview about how we feel it would be appropriate for us to teach those students under our care. And then I would look at my class and I would make my own planning decisions, because I know that Helen needed extra support with X, Y, or Z, and Alison needed some extras with something else. So, and what other people might be interested in the class. And it's at that point that the teacher will think, what's going to really enhance this learning is that we have an outside the classroom event that can actually enrich what I'm doing in the classroom. It will be bringing in somebody new for the students to meet with. It might be a new environment, or it might be new content. So from that great big heavy tome of the Education Act, you move down to where we connect with the school and the students. So that's how it comes about. So the school's local curriculum is worked on with the whole community, or should be worked on with the whole community. It can sometimes be tempting as a principal to sit down and write these plans, because you're sure you can do them very efficiently, but that's not going to give you a curriculum that's reflecting your community. So we're going to be hearing from Sue later, but on TKI, there's a really fantastic little 4-minute clip that describes how schools develop a local curriculum. So rather than me talking for 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to have a look at this clip before we move on.
Kia ora. The purpose of this video is to help you understand how to develop a local curriculum for your school. It explains how you can weave the elements of the New Zealand curriculum into your school curriculum. The New Zealand curriculum sets the direction for teaching and learning in New Zealand schools and is committed to all learners experiencing success. It provides a clear statement of what is important in education. Schools take the New Zealand curriculum vision and ask, what does that look like for our community? The New Zealand curriculum is a framework rather than a detailed plan. It is flexible enough that schools can design their own local curriculum based on teaching and learning that is meaningful for their students, whānau, local iwi and wider community. Your local curriculum is the way that you bring the New Zealand curriculum to life at your school, while also expressing what is important to your school and community. What you do at your place will be different to other schools because your learners, your community, and your location are unique. Using the elements of the New Zealand curriculum, you can guide the development of teaching and learning for your learners. Let's take a closer look. Your local curriculum works towards achieving the New Zealand curriculum confident, connected, active, lifelong learners. It reflects shared values such as equity and excellence, and is underpinned by the 8 principles of the New Zealand curriculum. It draws on effective pedagogy, and it enables learners to develop key competencies and understandings across all 8 learning areas. All of these elements are woven together to build on the strengths, interests, and identities of your learners and community. There are many areas you can focus on when designing or reviewing your local curriculum. As you work on one area, it is likely that you will begin to consider other areas of practice too. A good place to start is to look at your school vision to ensure that all teaching and learning contributes to learners achieving this vision. Does it describe the teaching and learning that you value at your place? It's important that your vision is created in collaboration with all members of your school community, your teachers, learners, whānau, iwi, and other important community groups. This ensures an inclusive vision that can be used to guide the direction of your local curriculum. Making the best use of the people, places, and resources on your doorstep is integral to local curriculum design. Your community has rich cultural knowledge and expertise. Your local environment can be your classroom, including rivers, mountains, and seas. You can build learning-focused relationships with local businesses and organisations. This will look different in every school. When designing your local curriculum, you need to be clear about the specific knowledge and skills valued by your learners, their whānau and community. Your whānau and local iwi can help you identify their important local stories and histories. Work with your community to develop a shared understanding of learner progressions and achievement across the curriculum, building a common language of learning and ensuring coherent pathways. A graduate or learner profile can help you identify and share the skills, knowledge, and attitudes that you are all working towards to equip your learners for their future beyond the school gate. Developing a local curriculum is about making learning meaningful and rich for your learners, and about celebrating your special place in Aotearoa. Visit NZC online to find more examples and tools on strengthening local curriculum.
So at this point, I just actually want to say something about the word local, because the word local doesn't purely mean a physical boundary around your school. Of course it does, and best practice will mean that you are linking your students from the school, from their homes, and growing their knowledge further and further out. But it doesn't mean that a school local curriculum is geographically bound in a place. It's not place-based education, which I think would be another good webinar.
We're going to do a webinar on that, yeah.
Because you might find that a part of a school's local curriculum is national or internationally based because of the community of their school. So it doesn't have to mean that local curriculum is only about what's local. When we have schools, for example, visiting Wellington from other places in Aotearoa, we can sometimes frame it as this is the capital city, and so it's still important to them, but it's not physically very local. So that little animation has some really great quotes in it that we've included on the slides here, and about making the best use of people, places and resources on your doorstep. And so it's also, this is a joint action that will happen. The school is responsible for their local curriculum, but we can be here because we are part of the people and places on their doorstep. And we are making the learning meaningful and rich. And it did say in there as well, it's learning focused. So it's not just about going out and having a really good fun time in your local environment, which we do as well, but it is definitely learning focused. And also the local environment can be your classroom. And that's something that can really be explored, about using maybe some of our sites as a classroom for longer periods of time, a lot of different ideas around that. So you get the idea that the local curriculum will be different in each school, but there are certain key elements that you will see in all schools. And if you've visited any or many schools, you'll feel when you go into different schools, you will get different feels because of their local curriculum. And so the job of that is to bring the New Zealand curriculum to life for the students, and we bring the local curriculum to life for the school. So the next slide looks a bit daunting, and it was because I kept adding more and more pictures and thinking, oh God, there's another document that people have to take account of. These are the documents that schools will take account of when they're developing their curriculum. And there are links to each of these on this slideshow if you want to investigate any more. And I know some of you will be very familiar with lots of these. So Te Marautanga o Aotearoa is the bilingual Kura curriculum, a really fantastic resource for all of us. Te Whariki is one of my favourites. It's the early childhood curriculum, but the integrated nature of learning that is described in there absolutely, to me, describes what local curriculum and our relationship is with schools. It's about bringing everything together, not siloing things. It's a fantastic document. Next to that, there's the New Zealand curriculum. Aotearoa New Zealand histories. Some of you may have seen over the last few days that implementation is now moved in schools to 2023 rather than being next year. But I know that lots of schools and we will want to start engaging with those ideas next year, sooner rather than later. Coming back to the bottom left, the refreshed Māori education strategy used to be called, well, it still is Kahikatea, but it has some other strategies linked as well. So that's the document all about Māori students being able to learn and succeed as Māori within the education system. And we can have a part to play in that too. And similarly, the Pacific Education Plan has some other great resources in there. The one that you can't read properly is the National Education Learning Priorities that I mentioned before. So you can see there are 5 of them. The Te Tiriti o Waitangi is there, which underpins everything we do. And the Learning Support Action Plan is there for students who need supplementary or extra support to access the curriculum. So it describes how that can happen. And we are being charged with being able to meet the needs of all students at our sites. So that is something that can help as well. And a couple of other things that will make up what a school decides on is they will look carefully at their student achievement data to see where they've got greatest needs, and of course their community makeup. So those are some of the background documents that will be pulled in, and we're really lucky to have Sue Clement here, as Helen introduced at the beginning, the principal of Te Aro School, and she's done many or several iterations of their local curriculum, and at this point she's going to describe for us who was involved with the local curriculum, how it was developed, and what are their current priorities. So kia ora, Sue, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for coming.
Kia ora koutou, ko Sue Takonga, ko ahau te tumuaki o te kura o Te Aro here in central Wellington. Thank you for inviting me to talk this afternoon. Our local curriculum had many iterations, and we're in the process of re-looking at it again. We've worked with 2 outside providers at times, educationalists who have worked alongside the staff team and the board in order to develop our curriculum. And now we're going back to the community. Currently, we're right in the midst of it, and it's been an awkward time to do it because we're doing it via surveys and by Zoom and Google Meets, and it's not the way we would normally do it. We would normally be consulting with our different groups within our school community in a face-to-face setting. Our school has over 40 different nationalities, and 40% of the school speak English as their second or third language. And in developing and having our conversations about our curriculum, we bring interpreters into the school, and we interpret all our documents into a number of languages in order to really connect with our different groups in our community. And so now we're looking at our vision again, and we're looking in particular at some of the things that our community think are working well for us, our strengths, and we're also looking at the challenges and the things that maybe our community think that we could strengthen. And the outcome of it all will be that we'll have a revised and refreshed vision, but we'll also hopefully come out with a graduate profile that we all agree on, that we're looking, what are we wanting from our year 8s when they leave us to go to high school. Here in Te Aro, we're right in central Wellington, and so part of our local curriculum is about accessing and using the city because it's on our doorstep, and that's really important for our parents. Many of my families live in basically studio one-room apartments. They have no access to gardens, and so environmental education is really important for many of our families, because the only time that their child plays in the dirt and picks up worms and searches for slaters or bugs and grows things is here at school. So we have a strong environmental focus, particularly at year 5 and 6. So we differentiate some of our curriculum for different year levels. So our year 5 and 6s are responsible for the gardens, our vegetable gardens, our orchard, and our beehives. And we harvest, or we extract at least 100 kilos of honey every year. And then at a senior end, at my year 7 and 8s, our families wanted our senior students to be giving back and doing some service to community, and that's both community, which is our school, so for the school, but beyond. So we run a leadership program at year 7 and 8, and that's come about through conversations with family about what do they want their young people to be able to experience and do. And what's unique about us is we're a full primary school, so we want to be able to offer our seniors those opportunities. We have a strong focus driven by both staff and community that on having an understanding about Aotearoa New Zealand history. So we've been doing that earlier than the document that has recently been published by the ministry. And so we've been doing that work, and we continue to do that. And we have in the junior school a strong focus on oral language and social skills, and we do that through ako takoro, so work through play, and that happens in the classrooms in the morning. And then because we're such a rich, culturally diverse community, we also have an outward focus about where do our young people and their families come from, and what are their stories, and what are what are the things that they bring to our school, which is their languages and their own families' cultural experiences, which we also weave into our programs. And we have a number of events that we do every year in order to celebrate all those rich cultural communities within our community. And a living document, it's very living, it's changing all the time, and I think that's how it should be. I think it should be reflecting the different students joining the community, the different families and their experiences and expectations around and aspirations for their children. I think I've covered it, Helen. But
that's fantastic. Thanks, Sue. I was making a few notes about what you said, and I need to tell you I drew a big love heart.
Well, thank you.
Because what comes through is your connection with the community and that rich and meaningful and connectedness of your curriculum, and the way that you've differentiated it through the year groups as well. It's really fantastic. So it just shows us all that, yes, you might see a little description of a school's local curriculum, but actually, again, when you go into different age groups and different community groups, then it will be differentiated again. So that was really great.
Yeah, and I really love the cultural diversity aspect of your local curriculum, because I know I've been into your school and I've seen how diverse your students are, and it really does make a very rich learning environment, all those different cultures bringing their own culture into school, and you celebrating that in a very important way in school and what you do in your learning. So I really love that. And when we first had our conversation offline about your local curriculum, you mentioned to me that well-being is a really important aspect.
I don't know how it dropped off.
Well,
Well-being's so elevated here at the moment. And yes, that's a real big driver at the moment in our programs and the things that we're planning, and even looking forward, thinking about what are we able to do in these changing times with these restrictions, and in order to make our families feel safe. But for many of my families, they don't receive their information about COVID from here in New Zealand. They receive it from afar, from their home countries, and so it's working with some of the narratives that they've received from family back home, and then trying to make them feel comfortable within our setting and what they're able to do here at school and what we can do safely with their children. So wellbeing is really important. And I have a large number of families. It's a recent thing where our families are in emergency housing and transitional housing. I've never had so many of those families. They're living in hotels on the terrace, Willis Street. And that brings, they're nearly 10% of my school community currently. And they bring really significant extra needs. And also we need to be able to support them and their wellbeing too, because they're living in difficult times. That's really hard.
We've had a question from Phoebe,
Phoebe.
saying that your curriculum sounds fantastic, and her question is, have you ever engaged LEOTC providers in the local curriculum design?
No, that's a good challenge though, Phoebe. No, I haven't. Currently, I'd worked with Lester Flockton. He lives down south, and he was involved in the New Zealand curriculum, and he's a wise man. And he's come up and he asks very challenging questions. He continually asks us why, and that's been really good, because he's really, made us go away and then come back again and work with them and rethink things through. And the other person who's really challenged me is a person called Mary Ann Mills, and she works with core education. And she challenges me around frequently about, like, why are we doing what we're doing? Is that the most important things we should be doing? And she also challenges us as a staff team around assessment. Are we really assessing what's really important? And that's been really, they've been really helpful and healthy debates and discussions that we've been involved in doing that. And we haven't got all the answers, and we're still working through it and still feeling like we're grappling at it. I think that it really is. The local curriculum just continues to evolve and change, and I think it should.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So moving on, thank you, Sue, for that. So if that's a description of what the local curriculum is, what does that mean for us in the culture and heritage institutions that we might be in? We can be reassured. We don't have to all be experts in all of those documents, but we can use them to help us in what we're doing and how we're working with our school groups that come to visit us. So, for example, as we mentioned before with the New Zealand curriculum, touch base with the visions, principles and key competencies, and reflect on how we incorporate those into programs that we are working on with students. And I will mention that whilst we don't focus on, these year students who are coming are year 5 and 6, so they should be working at this level, so we'll plan our program around that, because schools aren't, and children aren't like that. You'll have some year 5s and 6 who are working at level 4, some who may be working at level 1. But if you connect with the essence statement of some of the learning areas, there's a page or a page and a bit that describes for all ages what it is the core of, for example, social sciences or the arts. And those can be really good for a read over to help you start thinking about how you're integrating that into your work at whichever site you are. And for some of those other documents, just have a look at some of the executive summaries, some of the chapter conclusions and summaries to get some overviews of them. So we do not have to be experts in all of those. The diagram underneath is a sort of representation of the green part in the background is like the context in which the school's local curriculum sits. So that might be physically where they are. It might be the current COVID situation. So behind the school's local curriculum, and Sue really articulated that just now, there might be some almost crises that are coming up with changes to what's happening in the school. So at some point, the school is going to decide, or the teacher, the groups are going to decide that they want to bring an EOTC provider in to link with them. And that's where some magic can happen. So, so the school might connect with an EOTC provider and that larger one at the bottom, and then they might come, spend the time with us, and then go back to school and do some work there. But I've also just tried to show a couple of examples of other things that might happen. There'll be other EOTC providers out there, but there also might be some links between two sites. For example, Experience Wellington, we have a linked program called Star Path, where students start at the museum. We look about the history of navigation. We do some practical experiments out in the city, and then they go up to Space Place, and so they're using more than one site. There might be schools who actually spiral round, so they might spiral round to one or more providers where they're developing their local curriculum and see the benefit of reconnecting with a similar place, perhaps once a term or once a year, or however they want to do it. So there are many different ways that schools can connect with us, but it is only a tiny, tiny part of that whole learning that student is going to be taking part in. And in a way, that's why it makes it so important. We were just talking before about feeling nervous about things, and I still feel nervous before every school group comes in, even though I've taught lots of them and done lots of teaching in my life. But I think it's because you want to be the best that you can and give them the best possible learning experience while they're there. So we're only a small part, but I know we're a big part of students learning. So just a few practical examples now, and I put thanks to the Experience Wellington Learning Team, because as Helen said, we had a session around this a couple of months ago. It wasn't quite the same as this, but these are some of the ideas that we came up with. Okay, if schools have got this local curriculum, what might we need to think about as providers for enriching their local curriculum? So some of the things we're finding out what the school focuses and how they deliver. So those comms prior to the visit between the teacher can be really important. Now, we know that there is a range from the person who says, we've got an hour on Friday afternoon that we need to fill in, can you book us in? And we'll go, yes, sure we can. To the other teacher who might come contact us and say, we've got this inquiry going on and I've got a feeling that you might have something that can support us. What do you think? And then start the emails and the phone calls and maybe the visits to the site where you can actually develop the program specifically for that group. So there'll be a whole range, but our communication prior to is really important. Sometimes we find that if we haven't got much information from the school about the school itself, if we just pop onto their website, we can quickly get an overview of the school. And sometimes if you know what their, for example, if the 3 R's, the respect yourself, respect others, respect the environment, are important for that school, you can bring that into what you're doing and immediately build a connection with the school. We might, if we have got target schools, might look at the local schools, local curriculum across a wider group of schools, getting to know them and plan what we offer as a result of that. So a bit of a reverse local curriculum planning there. Maybe we can look at some longer relationships with fewer schools in some cases. I know some people do come back for repeat visits, and so you can develop that learning with the students. Others, it's one-off. We can use what we've learned today as well to think about our current programs and our proposed new programs. So see where we feel we best fit and how we can integrate some of this local curriculum information with our programs. Appreciate the time. The next one, the time it takes for us and the teachers to get engaged in co-constructed work, because if you ever you know how busy teachers are. They've got a lot of pressure on them for time, and it's really great if we can work with them, but be kind to yourselves as well, because if you start to take on too many in-depth projects, it can get unmanageable in a way. So be realistic about that if you're co-constructing things. We've talked about communicating with Kahuiako, who are the groups of schools that work together. They have shared student achievement targets across a whole range of schools. They might share certain aspects of their teaching and learning. So if we can access a Kahuiako, it means that we will be able to tell them what we can offer, but also gather from them from like a one-stop shop almost in some cases. And the other thing that we know we have got to consider a lot is the current environment and the future COVID environment. And if schools can't come to us, what are we going to do? What's the importance of digital connections, and what could we build up so that we can maintain our contact with schools if we haven't got face-to-face? So yeah, the question, I guess, is how can we actually enrich the school's local curriculum? And Sue, I'm going to bring you back in again, because I know that Sue's got a few ideas about ways that we as providers can actually help and support a school. Because what I'd like us to do is take some of the burden from the schools if we can, whilst working with them. So Sue, have you got a few ideas?
I hope I can remember them. That was a few weeks ago I spoke to Helen. Well, one of the things that has worked really incredibly well on 2 occasions is that you as LEOTC providers have actually come into our school, and you've come in and worked for a sustained period of time, maybe once a week, maybe intensively for a week. And those have been really lasting.
Hello.
And we did that once through the City Gallery, and we had the artist and then a dance expert. So we had a visual artist and a dance expert who came in, and then our students were able to showcase their pieces of work that they created under the guidance of the artist back down at City Gallery, and our families then went to the gallery and enjoyed that. And I think that those sorts of experiences are really exciting. Another one we did was with Te Papa, and they sent out to us a number of their key staff who were involved in curating exhibitions, and they talked us through the process of having your own exhibition and how you look after and care for taonga, and how you can write some narratives to talk about your piece of taonga and share it, how you can display them. And they came in and worked through and did a rotation around all our classes. And then we did work back, we did work at school together. And then they came back and we celebrated by opening up our own exhibitions here at school. And we documented them. And in the good old days, we did lots of, colour photocopying and photos and all that. But now, actually, I think I'd publish some books. I'd actually use the wonderful material that was gathered and make them really lasting ways to remember the event. And I'd publish them using, I can't remember, they're really great. You can just send all your photographs in and all the text. And I'd have a class one. I'd have one per class. I'd have a set in the library. And I think that would be great. I'd give the opportunity to families to order them too, because they're such a wonderful piece of learning, and they really are treasures. They were magnificent pieces of work the students did. Plus the students actually felt like they really were like museum staff. They were there, they were caring for very valuable family possessions and treating them, and they got to wear white gloves and make signs, and they, we turned the school into an exhibition space. So I think that those sorts of things would be fantastic. I'm seriously looking next year to having an artist in residence in, because I feel like with the COVID environment, it's really hard to plan for certainty. But I do know that I could bring someone in here and be able to manage some of that COVID stuff much more easily than taking my children all the way through town, masked up, some of them and some not, and then go through public spaces. And I think that some of my families would feel much more comfortable knowing, but the person would have to be fully vaccinated. So, but I think I could get round that. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking at. So I budgeted for EOTC for next year, but I'm thinking about it in different ways. I'm thinking about what are the other experiences I can bring to my students, and that I can do it in a safe way, and I can do it in a way that is less stressful for some of my staff, because they found it really hard chopping and changing, and for those of you in Auckland, aroha mai, I just feel that it's really hard to be having to go through all those changes and then make your plans again. So I think those are my couple of suggestions.
I remember another thing that you said to me when we first talked about it. I'm just looking at my notes from our conversation a couple of weeks ago.
Good on you.
A really great idea, which I thought lots of people could take up, where you suggested that various museums or galleries or cultural and heritage sites around the country could invite a few members of staff from each of their local schools in to have a hui, or online to have a hui, and to share their local curriculums. And through that conversation, where everybody describes what are the key things in their local curriculum, you might find some synergies across different schools in a region. Yeah. And then you could develop a program that sort of speaks to those synergies and would actually meet the needs of local curriculum across a range of schools, without having to just work one-on-one with one school in particular. Absolutely. It might be a more efficient way of working, and also build community at the same time. So I really love that idea.
Ministry of Cultural and Heritage did that recently, and they invited a number of the inner city Wellington schools to do that, and that was really successful. There was we were the only primary school, but there were secondary schools there. But I think that would be a really good way of doing it, because it would conserve your time, and also it would also build relationships amongst the schools, that whole idea of collaboration and people sharing their learning in different educational sites. That would be great as well.
Yeah. I also remember you saying that with the new histories curriculum coming on board, that you've got a particular interest in learning more about place names around your school, and that you thought that maybe that could be something, an area of knowledge or expertise that a local museum or cultural site could help you with, or maybe partnering up with local iwi as well to kind of build that knowledge about the local area and local stories.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunities for collaboration. I think that it's a really great time, and I know that you maybe have to compete amongst each other, and I feel unfortunate about that. But I think that the idea of being able to, there must be in each of the regions around that you could come up with some areas that make links to different schools, that you could maximize that then, and would be of value to every school in that particular area.
Yeah, that leads really well onto the sort of summary of next steps, because one of the things I was thinking about, Sue and others, was that when we think we don't need the local curriculum to be overwhelming for us, because we take the lead from the school, but we probably do need to think about, when a school starts looking for somebody to support their local curriculum, what is it that we're showing them and telling them with the first contact? So it might be the website, it might be leaflets or pamphlets we have. Have we got something in there that says, hey, and we've got space to listen to your ideas and ways that we can work together to support your local curriculum? Or does it say, well, we can offer you this, this, or this, and if that doesn't fit in, then they might look elsewhere. But yeah, that collaboration is really going to be important. So the next steps, really, your ideas go in here, because we're all in different places with our connections to schools, where we are, how close we are to schools. We've all got different resources and different availability of time and resource, as have the schools. So it won't be the same for everybody, just like everybody's local curriculum isn't the same. So really, it's about thinking about, how do you reflect, or how do we reflect our commitment to supporting our schools' local curricula, remembering from that ELC application form, whether that's important or not, these things are important, that it's authentic, hands-on and interactive experiences that people are looking for, building on broad curriculum learning, so not too specific. You're still, of course, if you're a space-based area, you're going to have a focus on space or science, but it's a broad curriculum learning. And working in collaboration, like we've just been saying, with the schools and Kura to help to complement and enhance what experiences those students are having. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Hopefully people feel confident that the local curriculum is really about us connecting with the schools, talking with them, collaborating, but seeing how we can support and make their learning for their students really, really meaningful and exciting. That's it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is, in addition to reaching out to Sue, to invite her to come along and support this discussion about local curriculum, I also got in touch with another local principal, Liz Rose from Brooklyn Primary School, and asked her about how she developed her local curriculum. And she sent me a link to her website, and there's a really great sort of little mini PowerPoint on her website that takes you through all the steps of everything that's important in their local curriculum. And I think lots of schools are putting their local curriculums on their websites. So I think the onus is on us to do a bit of legwork and a bit of research, and to look at the schools that maybe visit us regularly or that are in our areas, and actually go to their websites, have a look at what their local curriculums are. If it's not on the website, contact the school and ask, and just have that conversation so that we've got a really clear idea about what it is that schools might be wanting from our programs and how we can really intersect that learning. So I think I'll try and put that link in actually in the chat. Or do you want to do it, Mel? There's the link there. Mel will put the link into Brooklyn Schools local curriculum, so you can see that as another example to look at. Has anybody got any questions for Sue or Alison? Oh, Monica's put a question. For Alison, how do your educators approach programs differently when they want to support the school's local curriculum?
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on what communication has happened before, because so it might be as simple as changing some of the vocabulary we're using so that the students connect with what we're saying when they come into the space. So if we can say, oh, I know that you're really looking at perspectives. When you're looking at protests, you're looking at the perspectives of the people who seem to be on the wrong side, for example. So it's about finding out from the school's local curriculum how they've honed it down, and then picking up on that. So we're not able to reflect their local curriculum in everything we do, but through talking with the teacher, we can find out what part of the curriculum it is that they really want to engage with when they come to us. Don't know if it answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Thank you, Monica. If there's any other questions, you can either raise a hand or put them in the chat for Sue. While you're thinking about questions, the other thing that I've just been reminded of, Sue, that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was to do with the current and COVID environment. And I was asking you about how you felt about taking your students out of school. And you gave an example of the sort of things about you'd have to think about when you take students out, and that your board is actually being quite careful and conservative and risk averse around this, which I know that isn't, you know, it varies from school to school, because we've had people visiting us at Te Papa, you've had people visiting you. So there's a real variety in response to the current COVID situation and going out of school. Have you got any advice, Sue, for galleries and museums in terms of giving reassurance to schools who might be wanting to make a visit?
I think probably sharing your practices, whatever you've agreed within your management team or board have insisted on, and sharing that with schools. I think that then they can make their own risk assessment and say whether they feel comfortable or not. And I think being aware that some schools will be taking a more conservative approach, and that meets the needs of their particular communities, and being just, I guess, accepting of that, even though you may be surprised at some of how risk averse some people might be. Yeah. So I'm having to take quite a bit of time and work through with some members of my community about what they're able to what they feel comfortable enough for their children to be involved in doing.
I don't know if you're aware, Sue, as well, that some museums and galleries across the country are actually investigating the idea of doing virtual experiences. So you can zoom in and you can have either a live experience or a pre-recorded experience or an interactive experience. And there's quite a few people who are on the call today who are going to be sharing some of those experiments with distance learning and digital tools to reach schools in our upcoming webinars. So that, that is another option. I know that you talked about having an artist coming into your school, but yeah, I'd encourage you to have a look at what's available in terms of distance learning and virtual tours.
I think that probably schools are much more open to looking at now, having been through a second lockdown. So I think that that's a great thing to be promoting when you talked about how you reach out to school communities, to actually be saying that you can connect with us in the following ways. I think that would be great. So I think that people are looking at alternative ways. I think they might just need a prod or two from you guys.
Yeah. We've got another question from Phoebe. Sue, would you like organisations to share their vaccination policies? This is something we're currently debating.
Well, actually, my board are asking for that. They're saying we want to know if our children are going to the swimming pool for swimming lessons, are the staff vaccinated? Will the instructors be vaccinated? So they're asking me that already. And I've got people who are sending me that information without even asking for it. I've just had a couple this week who are saying, hey, we often come to your place. We're just letting you know that every member of our team is vaccinated. And so that's great. And at the moment, I'm not actually asking to see in paper. They're just sending me an email, someone in their management team or an HR or whatever, or is sending me that as an email. And I guess we have to operate with a level of trust. I just have to hope that that's what they're telling me is the truth. And just like I have to answer some of my parents' questions about are my team vaccinated or not.
Yeah, that's really, really great to hear that, Sue. Thank you. I know that's quite a hot topic for all of us to be dealing with right now. So it's been quite useful to have your insight into that, your perspective. Okay, so well, I think there's no more questions coming through, so I think we're ready to draw this conversation to a close. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights into local curriculum and for demystifying it for us, Alison. I just wanted to let everybody know that, that some of those other documents that you referred to earlier, the other curriculum documents, we are planning to have other webinars around focusing in on some of those other aspects of the curriculum for early years and for Māori. So look out for those. They'll probably be coming in the new year. And our next webinar next week is going to be a really exciting one. So we've got the how to develop a 360 degrees virtual gallery tour. And that's with Govett Brewster and Puki Ariki, members of staff presenting to us. And if you're thinking about coming along to that, it's a really good idea to take a look at the 360 degree tour before you come to the webinar. And there's a link for that in this slide or on our website. So have a little play around in the 360 degree tour, and then you'll have a really clear idea about what they're talking about when they share how they developed it next week. So thank you for coming today. Thank you for your participation and your comments. And we'll close with a karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, ki mama, nākau, te tinana, te wairua, i te ara takatā. Koia rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia tina, tina, huie, tai kie. Thanks, everybody. Lovely to see you. Kia ora.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you, Alison. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.